I know, that was what I said.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to welcome you to the Utah Board of Water Resources General Board meeting. Today is October 11th, and we're just a few minutes after October 11th, 2018. We're just a few minutes after our starting time of 1 p.m. I would like you to be aware of the fact that the Board of Water Resources meeting is streamed live and is recorded so citizens can watch them later, and they're available at https://goo.gl/UFYEQN, if you can remember that. But anyway, it's available for your viewing pleasure if you'd like. I'd again like to call the meeting to order, and I would like to give the board members a bit of instruction to look at your microphone and make sure the green light is on your microphone so that your comments and motions can be recorded, and to pull your microphone close to your mouth so that we can have it recorded properly. With that, our first agenda item today is the approval of the minutes of the August 9th, 2018 board meeting that was held in Layton, Utah.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion we approve the minutes of the August 9th, 2018 board meeting.
I'll second it.
All right, a motion has been made by Blaine Ipson to approve the minutes from the August 9th, 2018 board meeting, a second by Steve Farrell. Any further discussion on the motion? If not, all in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Our next agenda item is water supply report, and Mr. Troy Broston of the Natural Resources Conservation Service. We'd ask him to come forward and make a presentation. Please, Troy.
All right, thanks for having me here. So let's get started. Okay, so the current water year is looking pretty good. We're 11 days in, and most of the state's caught anywhere from 3 to 5 inches up in the mountains. So you're welcome. I'm glad I could help there. Now, as to the past 12 months and the last water year, 2018, we can all turn to this person here. As you can see, I have no issues with throwing my previous supervisor under the bus. I do it at least once a month, just so I don't lose the ability to do it. All right, so we're going to talk a little bit about the water year 2018 recap, and it was a bad year. It was a year for records, and not in a good way. We'll talk about first with the snowpack, and this graph here is of the snowpack as of April 1st. Now, April 1st this year was really was pretty much the highest point of the snowpack for 2018 water year. And as you can see from the graph, our maximum amount of snowpack ranged from 82 to 45%, and most of the basins were hovering right around 60%. And some below or some around the 50% range. So going into the summer, we had half the snowpack. Many of the sites, the runoff period occurred about 2 weeks earlier. There was a shorter runoff period because of the half of snowpack, and reservoirs received very little as far as adding to the reservoirs. The only bright spot going into it was that many of the reservoirs, as you know, had a very good carryover from the previous water year. So the reason for that bad snowpack year this last year was, again, this high-pressure system that we've seen over a number of years, over the past 8 years. Every time the high-pressure system breaks down, we get a really good snowpack year. But when the high-pressure system establishes itself up over Utah, it pushes all that weather to the north or the south of us. And this year, it pushed it all north, and Montana received a lot of the snow from last year. They had record-setting sites for their snowpack, and Wyoming did quite well as well. So, looking at the snow water equivalent graphs, we'll start on north, and we'll look at the Bear, and the Bear going down south. Now, the Bear did the best out of all the basins, and primarily because of what's incorporated into the Bear River Basin includes areas up in Idaho and Wyoming. It was those sites in Wyoming that carried and bumped up the Bear River Basin. And so it wasn't a horrible year for Bear, but it was still below normal. They had a maximum SWE at 15 inches on April. And as we work our way south, the Weber had only 13.4 inches, and typically you'd see on a normal year over 20 inches of snow water equivalent. And as we work further south, Provo and Jordan had 12.6 inches, and you can see really it was all these sites, all these basins have been playing with the record low until about towards the end of March, and we received some pretty good snow in March that helped bump all the sites up a little bit, at least above what the low record was. Sand pitch, throughout the summer. Sand pitch and also the southeast area of Utah, as you know, has been in an extreme drought. So the snowpack was pretty devastating there, and then the going into the summer, and the summer amount of precip we caught in the summer just made it worse, and they maintained their severe drought conditions, and most of Utah was in drought itself. And then southwestern Utah, even though a normal year would be about 10 inches, they actually only caught about half of that, around 5 inches. All right, so we'll talk a little bit about precipitation. Now this graph is as of October 1, and so this is the end of the water year, September 30th, and this is the precipitation accumulation throughout the whole water year. So it's the amount of water that and the percent of average of that water for the 12 months of the water year. And it looks a lot like the graph that I showed earlier of the snowpack in April. You see the Bear doing a little better than many of the other basins, and while all the other basins are in the yellow range, which is about 60% range. So at the end of the year, our precipitation accumulation was about 60% across the state, and in some places like the southeastern Utah, it was at about 51%. So going in as of October 10th this year, we're at about 400% of average. So we're 10 days in, we're doing great. Now we just maintain this for the next 12 months. We'll have all the water we need. I put that graph out of place, actually. So going back, and so I was curious because after runoff period, we went into summer, and from June to September. So this is a bar graph showing the amount of precipitation that the basins caught from the month of June to the end of September for those 4 months. So the blue bars indicate this water year, 2018, June through September, and then the orange colored ones there are the what is considered to be normal amount of precipitation for those 4 months for each of those basins. And so you can see the Bear River is up north, and then we're just working our way south as we progress to the right. Bear River caught just over 1.5 inches for those 4 months. Normally, it will have caught over it catches over 4 inches. Weber and Ogden was just barely over 1 inch, Provo is about 2.5 inches. And so the northern basins did absolutely terrible as far as precipitation for the last 4 months. And then when we get into the Uintas, we usually see some nice convective storms up there, and we did get some of those, but they didn't pan out like what we usually see. And then as we get further south, you see it's actually like the Beaver River in the southwestern Utah, they were at or a bit above normal precipitation, and that's largely due to monsoon seasons. And that helped improve those basins down there, but even the southeast didn't really catch that precipitation from the monsoons. So monsoons will help alleviate a little bit, but overall, throughout the year, throughout the summer, again, Utah was just in a drought conditions throughout the summer. Now, looking at the precipitation for Bear River for the water year, it ended at 25.3 inches. Normally, you see about 35 inches of precipitation there on a Bear. And the Weber was playing with record lows for precipitation, and it pretty much achieved that towards the end. And so many of the basins here this year broke the records for precipitation lows, and you'll see that as we work our way south. Provo is pretty close to a record low at the end, and it was really playing with the record low towards the beginning of the season up through March, and then it accumulated some precipitation there in May and June. Duchesne River, again, that's playing with the record low there. And Sand Pitch basically set itself a record. It started out low and bad precipitation at the beginning of the year, and it just continued throughout the year. You can't actually see the minimum line because that is the new minimum line from 2018. Beaver River, it was basically setting record low in some parts of the year, and then popped up, but then it ended up pretty much where the record low was been recorded. And the southeast, again, southeast also set a record. And given that the southeast and Beaver and the Sand Pitch area were both in severe drought conditions, it's no surprise to see how badly precipitation was there this year. And a little black line that you see over to the left, that's our current water year. And in truth, we've caught, sorry, I want to point this out too. So this is the state scan site accumulation of all the scan sites in Utah. We have 34 scan sites in Utah, and they're all based in the valleys. And so what this shows you is that basically from June through the end of September, it was less than 2 inches of water that we caught over those 4 months in the valley, like 1.5 inches. And as of yesterday, we're at 2 inches in the valley. And so, you know, compared to water year last year, we're already over 20% catch. But water year from last year set a pretty low bar. Reservoirs, because we had such poor precipitation throughout the summer, there was no precipitation to help alleviate water use on the reservoirs. And so we saw heavy use on the reservoirs due to the lack of precipitation. And so as of October 1, the reservoir capacity across the state is about 54% compared to 70% last year. Many of the larger reservoirs like Bear and Strawberry are about 64 to 70%, and then many of the smaller reservoirs are much less than 50%. Many of them are actually just completely dry. Gunnison Reservoir has been dry for about the last 3 to 4 months. And there's that graph again to cheer you up. So this is just to look at the current, the this is another way of looking at the current water year for the last 11 days. So just about all the basins caught anywhere from 3 up to 5 inches. We had one snowtail site actually in Sand Pitch that caught 8 inches of water over the last 10 days. So that was the highest catch snowtail site we had. And compared to last water year, where we got up to 20% of the catch from last water year. So if we keep this up, we will certainly have more water than we'll know what to do with. All right, looking forward, NOAA, the 1 month outlook for NOAA is, the current prediction is above average precipitation for Utah. And so far that's panning out pretty well. This was made on September 30th. But when we look further out, 3 months outlook, it's looking like they're predicting above average temperatures and slightly above average increased chance of precipitation down south and equal chances for northern Utah. 3 months outlook is not very reliable, so we'll see where that takes us in a month or two. So the recap, water year 2018. Jeez. Oh. Hey. I got this. All right, water year 2018, we saw about 60% snowpack and about 60% precipitation accumulation. Well, our reservoir storage is about 50% or less going into a new water year. We set water year records, record lows based on a snowtail period. So that's going back to 1979 to present. So we're looking at about 49 years of data. And we've set new record lows last 2018 water year. 2019, we're 11 days in. Past 10 days, we received up to 3 to 5 inches up in the mountains. So we're off to a good start there. The 1 month outlook is looking above average temperature, above average precipitation, wetter in the south in 3 months, and equal chances to the north. So it's the ball game's just getting started, and we've got a lot of months to go yet. So hopefully we keep the wet pattern going, and we'll get a good recovery for reservoirs this water year, but we don't know yet. We'll hopefully hope for the best, plan for the worst. Any questions?
Thank you, Troy.
Yes.
Questions?
Exactly what Barbara told me not to do. Is this rain that we've received starting to show up in the soil moisture sensors or not yet?
Yes, it is. We have soil moisture sensors at 2, 8, and 20 inches in the snowtails, and we usually see an immediate effect on a 2-inch and then a lag of almost overnight in an 8-inch, depending on the type of soils. So it's the soils are getting saturated, and if they stay saturated going into winter, that will help us with runoff in the spring. So that's a good point.
Questions from the rest of the board for Troy?
Thank you, sir.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Broston.
All right, thank you.
Our next agenda item is a feasibility report for Spanish Fork South Irrigation Company. And we have with us today Mr. Neil Anderson, President of the Canal Company, Paul B. Hansen, Vice President of the Canal Company, and Eric Frandsen of Frandsen Civil Engineers. So, gentlemen, welcome, and Marisa Egbert will make the presentation, if you will, please.
I will. All right, is that showing up? Okay, Paul, we're good? Okay, sorry about that. Let me make sure I know how to function this thing. Oh, look at that. Okay. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, this project is for the Spanish Fork South Irrigation Company. And on this map, as you can see Spanish Fork City a little bit up there in the right corner, just to try to help you locate where this is. And then we're going to zoom in a little bit. This map wasn't in your board folder. Apologize for that. But kind of zoomed in a little bit better here now. Spanish Fork South Irrigation Company serves about 6,500 acres and about almost 450 shareholders. And let me back up. You can see the canal a little bit. You see the red line. If you go towards the right, you can kind of see the line of the canal. That is their main canal. It's about 9.5 miles long. They've got just over 2 miles in pipe, just over 2 miles are concrete lined, and over half, about 5 miles of just earthen lined. And much of this is earthen lined, and I'll zoom in a little bit better. The concrete lined section, it's probably pretty old, I would imagine, is up there at the beginning. And then the rest, as you see those trees, is earth lined. They did come to us just recently and we're finishing up a project that enclosed about 1.5 miles of pipe or canal into pipe as it was getting encroached on by development and houses. And in part of this, as they're out there and been in contact with their engineer, you can see that big box where it says area where water's standing. I don't know if the mouse works. Nope. And I'll show you some pictures of that. So there's a new owner that just bought that property, and he was hoping to build down there. And the canal is off to the right on this hill, and you go down below, and that's that area right there. It gave me memories of Florida a little bit. So they're not in a drought in that spot. But the thinking is that it might be coming from the canal. And also, as you can see back here, the kind of slope you've got with that canal. So the owner asked what could be done about it so that he can use that property. And these are some other pictures. You can see kind of the conditions of their canal. They were established in 1881, so I assume these canals are about that same age. And then you can see the heavy water that goes through there, and including going past some houses. I'm just sorry, I'm jumping, I know. Going back to this, they want to pipe through this area and hopefully contain that seepage that's going down there, and also just give some safety through this whole area up to I-15. I will let you know that UDOT, the company needs to cross that 1550 west or right next to that, and UDOT's asked that they extend that the pipe to go under and to the east side of 1550 west. That is not part of the cost estimate right now. This just happened in the last couple of weeks. So it's something we'll take care of with committal of funds, these adjustments. And then the company itself is looking, I think, Neil, it's probably where it says install new turnout structure. That's probably where you're talking about putting another pipe in.
It'll be a little more to the right of that.
Okay. The other tree area.
Yeah, the line of trees that goes down.
So the company decided, hey, we're out here, we're working on this. We'd like to put in another lateral to kind of help out with an area over there that struggling getting some delivery to them there. But we will worry about that addition when we do the committal of funds. Today's just authorization. But they're thinking that this is going to conserve about 1,000 acre-feet annually, definitely increase the safety issues, reduce those maintenance issues that you saw with that vegetation and seepage along those hills and adjacent properties. So the cost estimate that they came to us was for about $405,000, with the board contributing about 85%. And staff recommends the board authorize 85% of the project up to $344,000, and the project be purchased at 0% interest over 20 years with annual payments of approximately $17,200. That's staff's report.
Thank you very much, Marisa. Very well done. Mr. Anderson or Mr. Hansen, do you have any comments you'd like to add to Marisa's report?
I don't think I have anything to add other than we feel like it's a project that as far as saving water and safety, it's a good project to get done. So I think that's all I have to say.
Okay, questions from the board for Malcolm?
Mr. Anderson, I'm curious, the landowner who wants to develop their property, are they participating in this at all? I mean, they come to you saying, hey, quit getting us wet. What are they doing about it?
They are not at this point, other than we are possibly realigning a little bit through them to straighten out our pipe a little bit, which is helping them out and helping us out. But other than that, they're not participating in the cost.
Any consideration from DOT on that road crossing? Or is that all on your back?
Consideration as far as monetary?
Yes.
No, it'll all be up on us. As far as we know, we just met with them a week and a half ago, and there's still some things being determined there, but I don't know that there'll be anything come out of that.
Okay, well, not to put ideas in your mind, but occasionally DOT is cooperative with my canal company.
And we'll look at that, and they've been very cooperative with us on our last project that we did in helping as they were expanding a road. So we'll pursue that.
Okay, very good.
Chairman,
Mr. Farrell.
I'll make the motion that the board authorize 85% of the project cost up to $344,250, and the project be purchased at 0% interest over 20 years of annual payments of approximately $17,200.
Mr. Farrell, would you please restate your motion and be careful on your financial amount? Sure.
If you look on the screen, Steve, the motion,
It's the same thing.
there's a 250.
344,000. I'll make the motion, we approve the authorize 85% of the project cost up to $344,000, and the project be purchased at 0% interest over 20 years with annual payments of approximately $17,200.
Thank you for the motion, Steve. Is there a second to the motion?
I'll second that.
Norm Johnson seconds the motion. Any further discussion on the project? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, guys, for coming and presenting your project.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Oh, there it was, right there.
Mr. Reese,
Yes,
good to see you, Rick.
good to be here.
Eric Frandsen of Frandsen Civil Engineering. We're glad to see you here today. And we have a presentation from Benson Irrigation Company, project number E378. And Russell Hadley will make a presentation to us, please.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board. The proposed project is located in Benson, about 4 miles northwest of Logan in Cache County. In 2016, the board authorized a project to replace deteriorated concrete and earthen canals with pressurized pipe system. Water is obtained from the Logan River to irrigate about 2,600 acres. Just a reminder, here's what some of the canals look like. Some of the earthen canals, pretty weedy. Again, a real mess.
They look good with snow in it.
Well, at least they're level. And Chairman Holmgren is very sad about how deteriorated this system is. And these are folks up here, very serious dairy farmers. They sell all their milk every day to Gosner Cheese Factory. And this is the first time I had seen one of these milking carousels, and the cows happily line up and come in here twice a day. All right, since the project was authorized, labor and material costs have increased, and almost 14,000 feet of additional piping and regulating pond have been added to the project. The updated project is to replace 9 miles of open canal with 11.4 miles of 6 to 27-inch plastic irrigation pressurized pipe and construct a pumping station and regulating pond. Project costs have therefore increased substantially. As shown, the current cost estimate is $3,170,000. The authorized and proposed cost sharing are as follows. That the cost has gone up from $2,675,000 to a total project cost of $3,170,000. And staff recommends the board commit 58.2% of the project cost, up to $1,845,000, with the project to be purchased at 1% interest over approximately 30 years with annual payments of $72,000. And that is staff's report.
Thank you, Russell. Rick or Eric, do you have anything you'd like to add to Russell's report?
I appreciate working with you guys, and I appreciate the kindness of listening to us, and hearing what's going on, and I don't know what we'd do if we didn't have resources to help us. Appreciate it.
You're welcome. Eric, anything to add?
I'll just answer questions if there are questions from the board.
Questions from the board? Yes, Blaine?
I've got a question for you, Eric. We discussed in our board meeting earlier, and I'm not sure in my mind that I was satisfied that I understood totally. On the introduction, it says replacing 9 miles of open canal with 11.4 miles of pipe. So there's 2.4 miles additional, and it was hinted that maybe part of that was laterals or something. Where's the extra 2.4 miles coming from?
Yeah, I think we go back to the beginning, and if you look at the original feasibility report from 2016, we talked about 2,000 acres. And as we get into design and actually identifying every parcel, every shareholder, and you tally them up, there's actually 2,500 acres that are being irrigated on the current system. And so there were some parcels that were not part of that original 2,000 that we needed to get water to. And the board made a decision, as we typically do, that they will run the pipe to the edge of the property owner's field. And in some cases, that means adding pipe in places where we weren't counting that as open ditch, so that everyone gets a fair chance of having that pressurized water delivered to their property boundary. And so, yes, I would say combination of the two, extra parcels that maybe weren't identified in the original feasibility report and the laterals getting to the actual property line.
That answer your question, Blaine? Okay, questions from other board members for Rick or Eric? Seeing none, Norm?
Mr. Chairman, due to the fact that you were so depressed over that, the way that ditch looked, I'd like to make a recommendation that the board commit 58.2% of the project cost up to $1,845,000 with the project to be purchased at 1% interest over approximately 30 years with annual payments of around $72,000.
There a second to the motion?
I'll second it.
Kyle Stevens seconds the motion. Any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. Now, if I could just get Rick's water down to my pasture.
Thanks so much. We'll work on it.
Our next agenda item is West Porterville Irrigation Company, project number E401. And we have with us today Mr. Kip Adams of the Irrigation Company and Mr. Bryce Wilcox of JUB Engineers. So welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And we have Ben Merritt making the presentation. So Ben, if you will, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. The West Porterville Irrigation Company is a project that's been previously authorized and has come before you today to seek committal of funds. The project has proceeded very well. With a slight change to the cost estimate, there was they increased their pipe size diameter and also included a 6-inch lateral to the line, which shifted that cost a little bit. Just a quick recap on the project. They're abandoning a bunch of asbestos concrete, installing approximately 32,000 feet of HDPE pipe, expanding the reservoir, placing pressure relief valve that's also a micro hydropower PRV, and rerouting and reconnecting all the turnouts. And they're expected to conserve approximately 550 acre-feet of water and then reduce O&M costs. The applicant chose to take on a significant portion of the increase in costs from the updated estimate. So staff recommends that the board commit 42% of the project cost up to $996,000 and that the project be purchased at 0% interest over 30 years with annual payments of approximately $33,200. This is staff's report.
Thank you, Ben. Gentlemen, do you have anything to add to the project report?
Yeah, this year has proven to be a year that has been difficult for our landowners in the area, mainly due to the drought, but also due to the asbestos pipe. Throughout the year, we carried a hole in the pipe, but because of the age of it and the cost, we were able not to fix it, so we had to manage our pressure and our volume based on the leak that we had, which was very difficult. Now that our water year is over, and with this new pipeline coming, I'm very excited because when we lose a lot of water through the asbestos pipe at the joints from the leakage, and to be able to also be able to supply the water to the board, to the users throughout the line. So West Porterville Irrigation Company is very grateful for the funding that has been set aside for this project, and we look forward to working with you and with Ben on the completion of this project.
Thank you, Mr. Adams. Mr. Wilcox, you have anything to add?
I don't. Just thank you for your consideration on this project. It'll be a tremendous benefit to these water users in this area.
Okay. Questions from the board for, yes. Steve, do you have a question?
Have you decided you're going to remove the asbestos pipe or just leave it in the ground?
It has to be left in place.
It's in place.
Yes, so the new line will be parallel to the asbestos pipe.
Construction this fall then, fall, early winter, or?
Yeah, once we receive the funding, we will begin the solicitation of bids and procurement of the pipe. Right now, we've been working with JUB. We understand that pipe prices are pretty high right now, so we're working with them to find the best time to purchase that material. We want to begin the construction process as soon as possible.
Have it done before next irrigation season?
I don't think we'll have it done before next irrigation season. As soon as we can, yeah. But the existing line will be left in use or while we're installing the new line.
So the intent is that you will be using the old system until this one is completed in its entirety?
That's correct.
Okay.
So are you going to fix your hole in the?
We are. Now's the time to do it.
Okay, very good. Any other questions? Mr. Stevens.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that the board, motion to approve, a motion that the board commit 42% of the project cost up to $996,000 and the project be purchased at 0% interest for 30 years with annual payments of approximately $33,200.
Mr. Farrell seconds the motion. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you and good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next agenda item is committal of funds for Pioneer Canal Company, and Marisa Egbert will give the report. And before she does that, I'd like to ask you to, Blaine, to pull your microphone a little closer to you so that we can get it recorded well, please. Marisa.
Yes, sir. I'm flying solo here. They didn't need to come today because the terms remain as authorized. Just a quick reminder about this project, that they need to pipe this canal. It's going through the town, and also really need to get in a flow measurement device. And so these are some of the conditions that you'd seen some of these pictures before. And so the cost-sharing repayment remain as authorized, with the board funding $240,000, or 60% of the project. And they are getting that grant for $100,000 to help out, and then they will come up with the remaining amount, the $60,000 or 15%. So staff recommends the board commit 60% of the project cost up to $240,000, and that the project be purchased at 0% interest over 20 years with annual payments of approximately $12,000. That is staff's report.
Thank you, Marisa. Any questions from the board for Marisa on the project? Seeing none, Steve, would you?
Mr. Chairman, I'll make the motion that the board commit 60% of the project cost up to $240,000, and the project be purchased at 0% interest over 20 years with an annual payment of approximately $12,000 a year.
Is there a second to the motion?
I'll second it.
Jim Lemon seconds the motion. Is there any further discussion about the project? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. Our next agenda item is Davis and Weber County's Canal Company, and we have with us today the general manager, Mr. Rick Smith, and Bryce Wilcox is making a return encore performance. Oh, and Tom Cox is going to make the presentation. So, Tom, if you will, please.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, a few minutes ago, the Davis-Weber County's Canal Company brought a proposed project to the board to enclose approximately over 3,000 feet of the Davis-Weber Canal. You can see on the map where that's located. They recently opened bids. They're ready to go. The bids came within the budget, so they'll be installing a box culvert in the canal that looks like this right now. So there's saving some water, and there's a trail right beside it, so it'll be increased safety. The cost estimate and the cost sharing has not changed since authorization, so staff recommends the board commit 39.8% of the project cost to $995,000, that the project be purchased at 0% interest over approximately 20 years with annual payments of $49,800. That's staff's report.
Thank you, Tom. Rick or Bryce, do you have anything to add to the report of Tom?
Not much more, but but to say thank you again for your partnership and support through these different projects we've had over the years.
Okay, and part of our tour last summer, was that part of this that we were observing?
Yes.
You presented last.
One stopover, that one turnout was.
Okay.
Yep.
Very good. Questions from the board for Rick or Bryce? Seeing none, Kyle, would you like to make the motion?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make the motion that the board commit 39.8% of the project cost up to $995,000 of the project, and it be purchased at a 0% interest over approximately 20 years with annual payments of $49,800.
Is there a second to the motion?
Second it.
Jim Lemon seconds the motion. Is there any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Rick and
Thank you very
Bryce and Tom. Our next agenda item is Ashley Upper Irrigation Company, project number E373. And we have with us today Mr. Bert Smewen, President of Highline Canal Company. Mr. Billy Cook, Ashley Upper Canal Company, President. Mr. Gaywin Snow, General Manager of the Winter Water Conservancy District. And Mr. Troy D. Osler with Civco Engineering Company, and Ben Merritt will make the presentation. So Ben, if you will, please.
All right, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. This is a pretty big project and fairly complicated, and it was kind of a last-minute thing. So if I misstate anything, I invite you guys to jump in and correct me, because there's definitely a possibility that may happen. So the Ashley Upper Irrigation Company is sponsoring this pipeline project. They're in partnership with the Highline Canal Company. The two have a history of operating together and on good terms, which is commendable. And they are moving forward on this project together. You can see on your map here, with the blue line, where the pipeline is going to be installed. It's along the north, west, and south portions of rim of Ashley Valley. This is just a quick photo of their diversion structure off of Ashley Creek. Both canal companies share the diversion structure. This is a photo of their splitting structure, which splits the Ashley Highline from the Ashley Upper Canal from the Highline Canal. This is a quick photo that I took from Google Earth. I just kind of drew in there the outline of the watershed, just to sort of highlight one of the purposes of this project is to mitigate flood control when they get precipitation events that result in surface runoff. At the same time that Highline Canal is full of water, that situation can lead to flooding. And you can see that there's a number of homes and residences along the base of that watershed there where Ashley and Highline both run. And this is just another quick shot that shows where the location of each canal, and then you can see where I've circled in orange just a number of places where surface water tends to collect and then run into Highline Canal. This is a photo that I took of the same watershed and of one of the locations where that water comes down. And you can see where this individual has actually created a berm around his home to kind of stave off that flooding. In addition to the flooding concerns, this project is also estimated to conserve water, and it'll also be a nice liability reduction for the canal company. The county will continue to use these canals also for flood control once the pipeline has been in place. So benefits, the project is estimated to conserve nearly 11,700 approximately acre-feet of water per year. Liability reduction, like I mentioned, better flood control, increased crop production from the conserved water, reduced operation and maintenance expenses, and conversion of flood irrigation to pressurized systems. There was an error that was brought to us this morning. When you look at this slide where it says stockholder loan from Uinta Water Conservancy District for an amount of $2.5 million, it would be more appropriate to include that under the applicant, where the Uinta Water Conservancy District is actually using that $2.5 million to purchase right-of-way of the canal from the applicant. And so that dollar amount and that percentage of the project cost should be shifted up to the applicant. That would be more accurate. Staff recommends that the board authorize 23.8% of the project cost up to $5,045,000, and that the project be purchased at 1% interest over 18 years with annual payments of approximately $308,000. And this is staff's report.
Thank you, Ben. Gentlemen, you have additional information you'd like to give to the board?
Yes, I'm Bill Cook. I'm the president of the Upper Canal, and we appreciate the opportunity to be able to work with the board on this project. This is a project that we've been working on for quite a while. I appreciate Ben's report. The only variance that we would like is to have the board consider is with our obligations. Staniker Dam is right now in the process of having a dam rebuild that we're going to have to repay a percentage of that. And we would like to request, rather than the 18 years, that maybe we could have a 30-year loan through the board as opposed to the 18, to help us to try to make our obligations to the Conservancy District on this dam rebuild as well as this payment. So if we could request that, we'd appreciate it.
Okay. Mr. Smune or Mr. Osler or Mr. Snow?
No, I'm just here to answer any questions the board may have.
Okay. Gaywin, anything additional you'd like to add?
Never can keep my mouth shut, and I probably should. Yeah, just with that clarification that the Uinta Water Conservancy District obtained funds from the CIB to purchase the easement from these, from 3 canal companies actually, the Highline, the Upper, and the Rock Point. And the district is responsible for the repayment of that loan and nobody else. So just so you know that all of that funds that they're showing there should be applicant and not any loan repayment on that. And we are rebuilding the Staniker Dam out there. We don't know what that's going to cost because it's a Bureau of Reclamation project, and they go and rebuild it and then send you the bill. So we don't know what that's going to be.
Thank you for that clarification. Questions from the board? Lane.
I'd like to ask a question on, it sounds like you're going to leave the old canals open. And said that you use them for flood control and all that. Who's going to be responsible and have the liability and the maintenance responsibility and all of that for the old canals that are now going to be used for flood control?
With that, it'll be Uinta County that will be responsible. That's the purchase of the right-of-way, is so that the county will be able to have that right-of-way with the Uinta Water Conservancy District, and it will be the county that is responsible and liable for those canals.
You have that in writing? Is that part of some agreements or anything? Or?
Yes, those agreements.
Yes.
Yes.
Additional questions from the board? Seeing none, Mr. Farrell.
Mr. Chairman, make the motion that the board authorize 23.8% of the total project cost up to $5,045,000, and the project be purchased at 1% interest over 30 years with the annual payment of approximately $195,000.
I'll second that motion.
Blaine Ipson seconds the motion. Is there any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ben. Next agenda item is the Little Cottonwood Brown Ditch Company, project number E413. And we have with us today Mr. Carl Moody Mr. Keith Shelley. Orem Ploger. Ploger of Frandsen Engineers, and Eric Frandsen with Frandsen Engineers. And making the presentation is Jacqueline Pacheco. And Jacqueline, will you please give your report?
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, the Little Cottonwood Brown Ditch Company has been diverting water from Little Cottonwood Creek since 1867. When the company was established, the water was used to irrigate approximately 800 acres of farmland. The shareholders currently use the water to irrigate lawns, gardens, and parks. They haven't received financial assistance from the board in the past. I think I'm missing my map. Okay. Oops, my map is not showing up here. But their current system consists of a diversion dam and approximately 19,600 feet of distribution line that is composed of open ditch, concrete pipe, and corrugated pipe. The proposed project is to replace the existing diversion dam on Little Cottonwood Creek and install a new SCADA-compatible measuring device. The new diversion dam will also include a walkway which will allow easy access to both sides of the dam. They would ultimately like to convert their existing distribution line into a pressurized secondary system with meters at each connection as a second phase of the project. They were recently awarded a Water Smart grant, and they will apply for financial assistance for that second phase of the project when they're ready to move forward with it. Okay. So their current diversion dam is inefficient, and the applicant reports that approximately 1,500 acre feet of flow is currently lost downstream to the creek. Wooden planks spanning the length of the channel are currently used to divert water into the ditch. So these are some pictures of their structure. And the debris needs to be manually removed several times throughout the day. And the access point to the removal site is through private property. Let's see. So you have to cross through this bridge. You have to remove pods in order to be able to go through the other side and access the diversion point. I mean the point where you collect the debris, which is depicted in this picture. So it's all collected here. And when we went to visit the site this day, I think it was cleared at 7 in the morning, and then this was about 11. And all of that had collected there in that short period of time. The benefits of the project is that the diversion structure will be more safe and efficient, which will help shareholders use the water that is currently lost at the diversion dam. Staff recommends that the board authorize and commit 85% of the project cost, up to $374,000, and that the project be purchased at 0% interest over 20 years with annual payments of approximately $18,700. Thank you. That is staff's report.
Thank you, Jacqueline. Lady and gentlemen of the Canal Company, you have additional information for the board.
Well, it's I think the second oldest diversion of water on the Little Cottonwood Creek, dating back to, I was thinking it was 1863, but I guess that officially started diverting water in 1867. I wasn't around then. My partner here was almost then, but he grew up along this, along the ditch, cleaning out. I think he cleaned out the ditch back when he was a boy, so he may have a little more history or explanations about how the ditch has gone all of these years. But we appreciate the board helping us finance this project, because the existing dam, it's basically a concrete block on the bottom with pipe sticking up, and we have to walk out in the middle of Little Cottonwood Creek and place the boards, the planks, to create the dam structure. And that's pretty tricky at times with the flow coming through there. And it also, as she mentioned, it actually shoves all of the debris into the ditch. And it would be constructed to keep that clear, be automated, and the private landowner that owns both sides of the creek is in favor of this. And I think we've got just about everything in place that we need to be able to have the dam ready, so that if we go on to the next section of the project would eventually be to pressurize. This dam, if we didn't have this, I think we would very soon be at a point where we wouldn't be able to maintain the existing dilapidated dam. And it's also our largest water user is Salt Lake County and the McArthur Golf Course, and at times we're the only water source for that, and other times there are some additional water sources, but that's essential, along with what we feel is essential with some of our own irrigation projects for our own homes.
Okay, thank you. Any other comment?
I can say in the last 60 years, the dam has greatly deteriorated. It's shifted so that the water goes to the south side of the dam. We take our water out of the north side, so it's quite tricky, and then we have a lot of leakage going underneath the boards. And so most of our water goes downstream, and so we're in greatly need of this dam, and we appreciate the opportunity of coming before the board and asking for this request.
Okay, what do you do with the trash presently, and what will become of the trash that accumulates at the diversion structure going forward?
Right now, we haul that out in plastic bags about once a month. And lately, it's piled up faster and we can take it out because of all the rain and the wind and other stuff. But we haul it out manually right now in plastic bags.
Okay. Questions from the board for Canal Company?
You have an easement?
Yes, we do.
On that, to go in and to build this on the private property?
Yes. That's going to be recorded. Well, we're taking the recording of that down. We believe tomorrow we'll be able to take that down.
I had a question. You mentioned part of the project would be a future phase of the project would be to pressurize some of the systems. How many connections would there be with landowners, property owners down through that area? I'm assuming that would be for secondary water.
I'll pull some of these figures off poor memory. I think it's around 400 plus shares. I think approximately, I'm trying to think if it's a half or close to half is Salt Lake County, I believe, isn't it?
Well, 20% is Salt Lake County.
20%.
And the potential is we'd have over 400 potential hookups, depending on if we can sell them on that.
Hey. Yes, Blaine.
So what are you going to do now? You said your new structure is going to be designed to self-clean, just pass the trash on downstream. Is that the concept?
Most of it is leaves and limbs, and so yes, we just raise the gate up and let it go downstream, because we are the last users on the ditch, and it'll flow into the Jordan River.
Any other questions? Ms. Tennert, would you like to make a motion?
It would be my pleasure. Mr. Chair, I move that we authorize the project and commit 85% of the project cost up to $374,000, and that the project be purchased at 0% interest over 20 years with annual payments of approximately $18,700.
Is there a second to the motion?
I'll second the motion.
Kyle Stevens seconds the motion. Is there any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, folks, for coming in with your project.
Thank you.
Our next agenda item is Echo Ditch Company, project number E390. And we have with us today Ruth Richards of Echo Ditch Company and a return visit from Mr. Bryce Wilcox. Bryce is really working hard today. And the presenter is Ben Merritt. So, Ben, if you would make your presentation, please.
All right, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. The Echo Ditch Company, they've started on their project. Funds were previously committed, and they have proceeded to slip line the old natural gas pipeline from Echo Reservoir down underneath the freeway over to, well, if you can see on there, the section that splits into town, and then they've also piped most of what is located there on the west side of I-84. They took a break for is that correct? That's a pretty good description of what's been done. They took a break for the irrigation season and are going to resume this fall with the completion of piping what's left there in Echo. They are here to request additional funding today because primarily the cost of pipe has risen so much due to last season's hurricanes and the flooding in Texas of those industrial plants that were involved in the production of resin that they use to produce HDPE pipe. So they are requesting that the cost share be shifted to $518,000. Staff recommends that the board commit an additional $51,000 to the project and amend the purchase agreement to state that the board will provide 58% of the project cost up to $518,000. And the project be purchased at 0% interest over 30 years with annual payments of approximately $17,300. This is staff's report.
Thank you, Ben. Ms. Richards or Mr. Wilcox, do you have additional information to give to the board?
I'd like to say the construction now has slip lined the pipe, finished it yesterday down the west side of the railroad tracks to the shareholders there, and that's complete. And they planned to go under the railroad into town today, but the weather prevented that. So it's moving along at great speed, and I'm very grateful for it.
Thank you. Mr. Wilcox.
Yeah, as was mentioned, we took a break last fall because of the spring because of the railroad crossing. Our railroad permit came back too late in the season to get across without impacting the user. We got it about June 1st, and so we held off till this fall to cross the railroad. And so that, as she mentioned, is ready to be done today or as soon as weather cooperates. And then the pipe pricing and just some modifications we had to make with the railroad on the alignment just increased the costs, and that's why we're here requesting the additional funds.
Okay. Questions from the board? Seeing none, Mr. Stevens, would you like to make a motion?
I'd be happy to make the motion. Before I do that, though, being the area that I grew up in, I've had opportunity over the past few months to be up there a time or two and observed some of the construction that has gone on. And then in Bryce's defense, he was here the first time substituting for one of his other partners, and so that's why he's been here 3 times instead of just 2. Anyway, I would like to make a motion that the board commit an additional $51,000 to the project and amend the purchase agreement to the state board to state that the board will provide 58% of the project cost up to $518,000, and the project be purchased at 0% interest over 30 years with annual payments of approximately $17,300.
Thank you for the motion. Is there a second to the motion?
I'll second
Steve Farrell seconds the motion. Is there any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, folks, for coming in, and thank you, Ben, for the presentation.
Thank you.
Our next agenda item is
Very much.
M Irrigation Company, project number E136, and we have Troy Prestwich, Secretary Treasurer of the M&M Irrigation Company. Mr. Prestwich. Hello. And making the presentation is Todd Stoneley. And Todd, would you give your report, please?
Thank you. I'd gladly do that. In March of 2004, the applicant requested financial assistance from the board to replace 7.5 miles of canal with 4.5 miles of HDPE pipe. Work was completed in 2006, and the project has been providing efficient delivery of water since then. The applicant is current on all payments to date and has a remaining balance of approximately $581,000. As Troy mentioned earlier, Sanpete County is in the midst of a pretty dire drought, and they have not seen these kind of conditions in decades, with almost the entire county enveloped in exceptional drought conditions, which is the worst of 5 categories monitored by the U.S. Drought Monitor. This is taking a great financial toll on farmers and the people of Sanpete County, and there is no water for crops or livestock, and cities and towns are rationing. To ease the burden somewhat on its shareholders, the applicant is requesting that future annual payments on the project be delayed by 1 year. So staff recommends that the funding agreement be amended to delay all future payments for 1 year, and with the final payment due in 2032. This is staff's report.
Thank you, Todd. Anything you'd like to add, Mr. Prestwich?
Just thank you for your time and taking the time to listen to this. And it would be greatly appreciated by the people that, you know, the farmers and the people down there. It was a real tough year on them. This year was probably the worst that any of them going back, you know, 50, 60, 70 years can ever remember. So anything like this we could do to really sure help them out a lot.
Have you been getting any rain the last 2 weeks?
Oh, yes. It was raining this morning.
Well, good.
We're like he says, we're on the right track, but
wouldn't you admit that unless your alfalfa's dead, it's really good baling conditions when it doesn't get rained on?
True.
That's what I found.
It was just getting it collected close enough together to bale it.
Yeah, it's hard to pick up those stems that are that long. Questions for the applicant from the board?
I have a question, but I got a comment. I spent a week or a weekend down in Sanpete County, and I've never seen Sanpete County look as tough as it is now for being dry.
Big change from 2017 to 2018. Mr. Ipson.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that the funding agreement be amended to delay all future payments by 1 year, with the final payment due in 2032. Is
there a second to the motion?
I'll second it.
Jim Lemon seconds the motion. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Seeing none, motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming up. Thanks, Todd. Next agenda item, get the pages to turn. It's McArthur Frandsen Ditch Company. And we have with us today Mr. Doug Taylor and project number E348. Russell Hadley will make the presentation. So Russell, if you will, please.
Okay. Chairman Holgram, members of the board. The project is located about a mile northwest of Mount Pleasant, again in Sanpete County. In January 2014, the applicant requested financial assistance from the board to replace 4.8 miles of ditch with pressurized pipe. The project has been a success, benefiting the local agricultural community with improved transmission efficiency, application efficiency, and ease of use. And here's a plan of project lands and pipeline that went in, was installed. Here's what the ditches look like to start with. Broken up concrete ditches here, earthen ditches here. Here's pretty much what the valley looks like now. Everything's buried pipeline. The applicants state that this has been the worst water year ever seen on the Sand Pitch River, and the water ran out in July. Because of this, many of the farmers sold some or all their cows because they wouldn't have the feed to get through the upcoming winter. Due to this net decrease in income, the applicant states it will be a hardship on local farmers to make their annual payment on the loan this year. The applicant is requesting its contract terms be amended to delay its 2018 payment of $31,800 by 1 year. The original loan amount of $723,000 is to be returned at 1% interest over 26 years with annual payments of $31,800. The current balance of the loan is about $551,700 with 23 payments remaining. Staff recommends the funding agreement be amended to state that the principal payment be delayed 1 year. Regular payments of $31,800 will resume in 2019. An interest-only payment will be due in 2018. And that is staff's report.
Thank you, Russell. Mr. Taylor, do you have anything to add to the?
Well, I would really appreciate you guys taking this into consideration because I myself had to go buy hay to get my cows through the winter. And I've also had to sell quite a few cows so that I can still stay in business. With the deferral of this payment, I can buy some more hay and hopefully keep my head above. We don't have water, so I don't have to keep it above water.
Above the dust. Okay. Questions from the board for Mr. Taylor? Seeing none, Mr. Ibsen.
Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that the funding agreement be amended to state that principal payments be delayed 1 year. Regular payments of $31,800 will resume in 2019. An interest-only payment will be due in 2018.
Second to the motion?
I'll second it.
Steve Farrell seconds the motion. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you very much.
I hope it rains in Mount Pleasant.
It was when we left this morning, and we was both smiling when we pulled out.
Have you been up on the Skyline Drive?
I haven't, but I seen a truck come down off there, probably an elk hunter today, and he had about 6 inches of snow on his truck, so it's starting.
Good.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Next agenda item is Richmond Irrigation Company, project number E347. And we have with us today the president of the Irrigation Company, Terry Spackman. And I don't see, oh, there's Eric Frandsen. And our presenter is Tom Cox. So Tom, if you will, please.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, a couple years ago, the board committed funds for a project to pipe the Upper High Creek Canal. Part of the project was also putting in a new diversion structure, which was actually done in 2 parts. The first part was in, and the big water runoff hit, and they decided that rather than lose the structure, they ought to enlarge it. So there's the new and improved diversion structure. Put in a regulating pond, and it looks good. The first year they put water in it, so it's taken quite a long time to get it finished. Well, actually, it's not quite finished. And the part of the project was putting in 2 small hydro electric plants. So the project isn't quite finished, but the board's funds have all been released to the company. So the applicant is requesting that their payment be deferred this year so they can use the money that they've collected to finish off the project. Therefore, staff recommends the funding agreement be amended to state that an interest-only only payment will be made in 2018, and that the first regular payment will be made in September 1st, 2019. That's staff's report.
Thank you, Tom. Perry or Eric, do you have anything to add to the question?
I'm just open for questions.
Okay. I don't know that I have any specific ones. Is it, is the hydroelectric thing, is it worth the trouble in the long run?
Yes, it is. We wondered for a long time if it was going to be what we anticipated, but at the end of the day, it's working well. And just an FYI, for the last 12 months, I have a copy here, for the last 12 months, those 2 hydro units have produced about just right under $58,000 in revenue. And we project, we had a rough time getting them going just on the start side in July of 17. July of 18, it went a lot more smoothly. So we anticipate that that 58,000 can increase. And so we're excited that they're working that well. So.
Good.
I will make a comment too on the holding pond that Tom showed on the slides. This is the first summer that we've got to use that. The building of that pond ran into a real snag. We hit bedrock, and so we kind of had to change the design of that pond and kind of design as we went. But this summer, we used that pond for the first time, and it worked really well. During the week, we would build the water in that pond to the level that it can get. And then on the weekend, when we had a greater demand on the water, that would hold that demand, and so we was able to level out our water, and it really worked even better than we anticipated it would. So we were really excited about it. Part of our delay has been that pond. In hitting the bedrock, it slowed us way back. Then it put us into the mud. We had to pull off. Got going again, got into the frost, had to pull off, but it is now complete with the exception of the spillway, which is an emergency spillway, and a fence around it and seeding the banks, and then it will be completed. So we're right close, and we plan on finishing that this fall.
Okay, pretty good. Questions from the board?
Acre feet is your pond?
Under 20.
Under 20?
Remember
16.
16?
The dam safety is not involved with this.
We did go through the process of a dam smaller than 20 acre feet, so that we went through the entire process with the dam safety office, yeah. But it is within that threshold, and we had to resurvey because of the change in, alignment with the bedrock and everything. We took our drone out there and flew it, and resurveyed it, and it's about 16 acre feet in the end.
And it turns out, excuse me.
Go ahead.
It turns out it's a good thing it wasn't any bigger, in the sense that we ran into that bedrock and had to kind of redesign it, and we ended up moving a lot more material than was anticipated. It turned out to be a lot larger project than we ever anticipated. It kind of thumped us, but it's complete. We're good.
What kind of contract do you have on your power that you're selling?
We are selling our power to Hiram City, and it's 5 1/4 cents per kilowatt.
Is it a peak power contract?
What's that?
They only use it when they need peak power. There's
Buying every kilowatt hour.
They're buying it all.
Okay.
The more we can produce, the happier they are.
And it only generates during the irrigation season.
Yes. And on that, if you had this printout that I've got here, there's some revenue 12 months of the year. The one plant that is what we call the Cove Hydro, it will run 24/7. The Richmond one, our water level will drop enough that we can't run that during the latter part of the irrigation season. Usually some in July, usually not in the end of July, August, and September. We're getting ready right now to fire it back up again the 1st of October. So.
Any other questions? If not, Ms. Tennant, JT, will you make the motion, please?
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair. I move that the funding agreement be amended to state that an interest-only payment will be made in 2018 and that the first regular payment will be made September 1st, 2019.
Is there a second to the motion?
I'll second it.
Jim Lemon seconds the motion. Any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Terry and Eric and Tom. Let's see. Our next agenda item is the Rock Point Canal and Irrigation Company. And we have, that is project number E368. We have Mr. Leon Kidd, President, Mr. Ken Long, Director of Rock Point Irrigation Company. So have Tom Cox making a presentation yet again. So Tom, will you please?
In May of 2017, the board committed funds to the project to replace the approximately 5 miles of canal with pipeline. It's taken longer than anticipated to get the final piece of their funding puzzle in place. And so the project has just barely started construction. They went ahead and bought the pipe about a year ago when the prices were a little lower, so we lucked out that way. So the sponsor is here to request, and the staff recommends that the funding agreement be amended to state that the first payment will be due December 1st, 2019, and that would allow the project to be installed before the payments begin. And that's staff's report.
Thank you, Tom. Mr. Kidd, or?
Yeah, we haven't spent all the money, and we won't before the end of the year, so I need to postpone it a year so I can use it. We did started construction 1st October, so, and they're supposed to be done by the 1st of March, so depending on the weather of next year. We'll have it before the irrigation season next year, so it'll help a lot.
Very good.
We don't need any more money. We just want to spend what you guys give us.
All right, sounds good. Questions for them? Questions? Seeing none, Mr. Farrell, if you will, please.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make the motion. We agree to amend the state, the first payment, agree to amend the funding agreement to amend it to the first payment being due December 1st, 2019.
Is there a second to the motion?
I'll second it.
Mr. Ibsen seconds the motion. Any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, gentlemen, and thank you, Tom.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next agenda item is Fremont Irrigation Company withdrawal. Is that Blaine Ibsen area?
It is.
Okay. Need a report on that, or?
I can give a summary if you'd like.
Give us a quick summary, Tom.
The Fremont Irrigation Company several years ago submitted an application to enlarge Mill Meadow Dam and Reservoir. That was when they were supposed to be up for their dam safety minimum standards upgrades. That's taken a number of years to go through, and they're just in the final planning stages of that. It was their hope to raise the crest to enlarge their storage capacity, but we found that doing so would encroach more on Forest Service ground, and they'd have to replace an existing paved Forest Service road. So it proved to be economically infeasible at that time. So they're requesting that the application be withdrawn.
Thank you, Tom. Wayne?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that this project, number E-131, be withdrawn from further consideration by the board.
Second it.
Well, Stevens seconds the motion. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Thank you, Tom. I'd like to recognize some guests we have in the audience with us today. We have Mr. Nathan Bracken. I don't know if he's still in the room. Okay. Can't see him behind the pillar. Candace Powers. Here. Justin Atkinson. Here. And Everett Taylor. Everett. And Mr. Atkinson is Sunrise Engineering. Candace Powers is from Permanent Commission Impact Board. Bracken is with Smith Hardfixon. Half of Nature Conservancy today. I'll recognize those folks. Our next agenda item, dam safety, and first one is C058, Kusharam Irrigation Company.
You're stuck with me again. So the Kusharam Irrigation Company owns and operates Kusharam Dam, which is located a little ways north of the community of Kusharam in Sevier County. This is a dam safety upgrade project. The Kusharam Dam was constructed around 1900 and enlarged in around 1919. The embankment is about 26 feet high and about 1,850 feet long and impounds approximately 3,860 acre-feet of water. The existing structure does not meet current dam safety minimum standards because of undersized spillway, inadequate and aging structures, and downstream seepage. It is rated high hazard by the state. The proposed project will include replacing the outlet structure, slip lining the outlet pipe, filling in the existing mid-dam access well, installing downstream drains, constructing a downstream berm, and constructing a new spillway. It is hoped that the outlet and drain work can be completed while the reservoir is drained this fall. Matter of fact, there should have open bids for the outlet work as we've been in this meeting. It's hoped that the spillway work can be completed next year. The proposed cost estimate of the project is $2.7 million. This part does not include the cost of the spillway because that is not ready to go at this time. It'll be constructed hopefully next year. So the staff recommends the board commit 90% of the project cost up to $2,430,000 as a dam safety grant and 10% of the project cost up to $270,000 as a loan to be returned at 0% interest over 20 years with annual payments of approximately $13,500. That's staff's report.
Thank you, Tom. Board have any questions of Tom on the project? If not, Blaine?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that the board commit 90% of the project cost up to $2,430,000 as a dam safety grant, and 10% of the project cost up to $270,000 as a loan to be returned at 0% interest over 20 years with annual payments of approximately $13,500.
A second to the motion.
I'll second the motion.
Mr. Jim Lemon seconds the motion. Any further discussion on the motion before we vote? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next agenda item is the North Utah County Water Conservancy District Project C060 Dam Safety Report. And Tom Cox, who has become a permanent fixture for us.
I'll carry you through the end. The North Utah County Water Conservancy District was established in 1959 and owns and operates 5 dams and reservoirs in the North Utah County area. All of the 5 dams are rated high hazard, and they include Silver Lake Flat, Tibble Fork, Dry Creek, Battle Creek, Grove Creek, and yeah, that's 5. So I'll stop there. The primary purpose of the dams is flood control. However, Silver Lake Flat and Tibble Fork also provide recreational opportunities. To date, Silver Lake Flat and Tibble Fork have been completed. Their dam safety upgrade projects have been completed. And Battle Creek and Grove Creek are under upgrade construction right now, anticipated to be finished before the end of the year. And the board has committed just over $5 million for the upgrade of those 4 projects. See, Dry Creek Dam, that's the exit on the freeway is to your left, and Timpanogos Cave, or the American Fork Canyon is to your right. The Dry Creek Dam was constructed in 1962 as a flood control structure and is classified as a high hazard dam. The dam is 721 feet long and 37 feet tall and can provide flood storage capacity of approximately 248 acre feet. That was their design capacity. The existing structure does not meet state dam safety minimum standards. The plans are currently underway by the applicant and Lehigh City to convert the existing structure to a year-round storage facility with recreational facilities, and increasing the storage capacity to about 470 acre feet. The project features will include raising the embankment about 7 feet, constructing a new spillway, installing necessary drains, slip lining the existing outlet, and installing a separate irrigation outlet, excavating materials from the reservoir basin to increase the storage capacity, and constructing a sediment control structure at the upstream end of the reservoir basin. This work is estimated to cost about $14.8 million, but some of these features do not fall under the state's minimum standards upgrade requirements to upgrade the existing structure to its existing condition as a flood control structure. So as the board did on the previous 4 projects, it's recommended that the board provide a dam safety grant of 31.5% of the estimated minimum standards upgrade cost of $5,075,000. So 31.5% of that is $1.6 million. The NRCS will provide a grant of 65% of that, plus pay all of the engineering costs, and the applicant will pay the remaining amount. So staff recommends the board commit 31.5% of the state minimum standards project cost up to $1.6 million as a dam safety grant. It should be noticed that in addition to this work, about $1.3 million of recreational facilities will be constructed that NRCS and Lehigh City will pay for those costs. And this is staff's report.
Thank you, Tom. Questions from the board for Tom? Seeing none, Steve?
Mr. Chairman, I'll make the motion that the board commits 31.5% of the state minimum standard project cost of up to $1,600,000 as a dam safety grant.
I'll second.
Kyle Stevens seconds the motion. Any further discussion on the Dry Creek Dam? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Tom, for your endurance. Our next agenda item is Lake Powell Pipeline Management Committee report, and the first part of that is committal of additional funds. Mr. Bill Williams will make a presentation to that subject. Well, maybe it's Eric Millis, not Joel Williams.
Yeah, and apparently Tom changed his mind about taking you through the end. So here we are. So, Mr. Chairman and members of the board, I come to you representing the Lake Powell Pipeline Management Committee. I am the chair of that committee. Jim Lemon, representing the Board of Water Resources, also sits on that committee, as does Ron Thompson, representing Washington County Water Conservancy District, and Mike Noel, representing Kane County Water Conservancy District. And so I'm going to give you an update that we made, or that was made to the Management Committee last month, and just fill you in on some of the details of where we are. And following that, then Joel will give you some of the numbers on the finances for the project to this point, and also he, along with Greg Hansen and Marty Bushman, will talk some about the common interest agreement that we have talked with the board about previously. So since our last report to the board, the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission has issued a decision on the jurisdiction question that was outstanding for so long. And that question was whether they would hold the jurisdiction for the pipeline sections in between the power plants on the hydro system part of the project, which is the downhill part from the Canal area down. On September 20th, we got the answer. That answer was issued to us. And so some of the things that led up to that, on December 12th or December 11th of last year, FERC issued the Ready for Environmental Analysis notice to us, and told us that that jurisdiction question existed, and they had not made any decision on that yet. We turned around and within a couple weeks filed a petition for declaratory order that asked them to make that decision and also to stop the work on the NEPA process while they were working on that. Months went by. As you know, we were always hopeful that we would be on the agenda. We, in August, decided that we ought to, on the advice of our attorney, send a request to FERC asking them to restart or resume the NEPA process that was going on, and also ask them again to make that decision. So on September 20th, FERC answered that question. It wasn't exactly what we had hoped for. It was not a surprise, though. They decided that they would not hold the jurisdiction on those pipe sections, that would fall on BLM, who we've already been working with, and they have been working with FERC on this. We have a right-of-way application in with them already, and so it's just some adjustments to make things work, but it will be all right. So here's the timeline that we're looking at now that we have this notice. So the NEPA process is resumed again. There's a 60-day period for comments and interventions to come to FERC. We then have some time to answer those, at which time, after that, FERC will continue working on the draft EIS. We hope to see that released in May of this next year. There will be a comment period on that, and then we expect by January of 2020 to have the final EIS completed. And then after that, records of decisions, licenses, and those sorts of things to be made. So progress that we've been making since the last report. With BLM, we've been working through the Arizona Strip Field Office on a resource management plan amendment that's required because some time ago BLM dropped an area of critical environmental concern on top of the congressionally approved corridor for the project, that utility corridor that's been there for years. So we're working through that issue with them. We're also working with BLM on a revised plan of development for the project to account for some of the changes that have occurred since we last submitted documents. Accordingly, we're working with National Park Service. They are taking information from that plan of development that's being worked on right now and revising their right-of-way application. We have been working with the Bureau of Reclamation on a number of things. We held negotiation meetings, as you'll remember, last winter on the terms for the exchange contracts required as a condition of the Bureau having given the board the Flaming Gorge water right, which becomes the basis for the water right for the Lake Powell pipeline, as well as many other projects. So we've signed a document that agrees that the terms that we negotiated with will hold until such time as we're able to actually sign the exchange agreement with Reclamation, and that will be after the NEPA process is completed on the Lake Powell Pipeline project. Working with the Corps of Engineers on the Clean Water 404 permit for the discharge of dredged or fill materials into waters of the U.S., working with Fish and Wildlife Service on the biological assessment, which they will then, we will then turn over to them soon. It's nearing completion. And we have been continuing to meet and talk with the Kaibab Band of Paiute Indians, which the pipeline alignment could either go just south of their reservation or it could go through. And the discussion that we had with them this last Saturday as we met with them was that they are still interested in us staying on that highway alignment through the reservation rather than using our proposed alignment, which is south of the reservation. So the plan forward from this point, we've got FERC has a contractor working on the draft EIS. According to the schedule that I'd shown earlier, that will be released. There will be comment periods. We hope to then get the records of decision followed by design, the financing plan approved through the state legislature, and begin construction sometime around 2023 or 2024, and about a 4-year construction period on that. So 2028 is the date that we're talking about the need for the water to be delivered. Again, some of the things that we're working on show up on this slide: the EIS, the biological opinion, the resource management plan amendment, the contracts with Bureau of Reclamation, the water right change application, which is something that will be needed to change the nature and place of use of the water right that we have, the 401 certification approval through our Utah Division of Water Quality, again the 404 permit approval, and a stream alteration permit. So those are the things that we have been working on, and I will turn the time over now to Joel to give you an update on the project finances and the contract amendment that we're looking at.
Thanks. The current contract amendment that we're working under is amendment number 8. That expires here at this end of this year. The amount at that time that we entered into amendment 8 was $3.4 million, and invoiced up to this point is $1.8 million. And so there's about 1.5 remaining. So as you can see, we've only spent about 55% of the budget, but we're 80% through the time. There will be some carryover with this contract as it expires that will go into contingency in case it's needed. But we hope to stay on budget. And what this does show is that we are actually able to keep things under budget as we're going along right now through this permitting process. The total contract, as you consider, if that's Amendment 8, there's been several. The total contract is $36,373,000. Invoiced to date is $34 million, and so there's about $1.9 million remaining on the total contract. As we talk about this amendment number 9, the purpose would be one for additional time because it does expire at the end of December. We're looking at an additional 2 years to get us through the end of December of 2020 and needing an additional $3,066,000. And it would be to continue this permitting work that's been underway and continuing to work with these federal agencies, get through the licensing process with FERC and the right-of-way process with these other federal agencies. And the hope being to ultimately get records of decision on this project and then be able to proceed with design and construction and as Eric said, deliver water, targeting a delivery date of 2028. Any questions or discussion from the board?
Questions? Apparently no, Joel.
Eric, you talked about having to do a change application on the water.
Yes.
Is that through the state of Utah or through all the states that adjacent the Colorado River?
Yeah, it's just the state of Utah. Mm-hmm.
Flaming Gorge water, right, we're talking, isn't it?
It is,
Just a curiosity comment or question. So this process started in 2006, correct? And anticipated it'll be done in 2028? 22 years, roughly.
That's correct.
Takes a long time to do these projects, and we've spent quite a bit of time in the environmental compliance process, providing information and trying to do the studies that are required. And so, anyway, it takes a long time to do these.
I'm sure Washington County is hopeful it'll be 2028.
Yes.
So if possible, we would suggest staff would recommend a motion to commit these additional funds for this amendment number 9.
Mr. Lemon, would you like to make a motion?
I would. I make the motion that the board commit $3,066,000 in additional funds and extend the contract through December 31st, 2020 for permitting work on the Lake Powell Pipeline project.
Is there a second to the motion?
I'll second it.
Mr. Stevens seconds the motion. Is there any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. I'd like to notice at this time that Juliet Tennert was excused from the board meeting and was not able to vote on this motion. So, thank you.
We do have one other item related to Lake Powell Pipeline, and it is the memorandum of understanding on the common interest agreement. If we want to invite the two gentlemen from the AG's office, Marty Bushman and Greg Hansen.
Mr. Bushman.
If possible, I'd like Greg Hansen to give just a quick explanation on what this memorandum of understanding is intended to accomplish.
Mr. Chairman, thank you for the invitation today. The common interest agreement that is before you is a memorandum of understanding between the chairman of the Board of Water Resources, the director of the Division of Water Resources, the Washington County Water Conservancy District, and the Kane County Water Conservancy District, and serves as a document to guide the parties on how they handle information and records developed in support of the Lake Powell Pipeline project. As this board has discussed in the past, there's a substantial amount of information and records that each party generates and must share between the different parties. Some of those records could be covered under attorney-client privilege or a work product doctrine that would preclude their public release. All of these records are also subject or potentially subject to the Government Records Access and Management Act, and it's important that the various parties treat those records consistently and properly categorize them as public, protected, or private. This document lays out the procedures for doing so and ensures that each party understands how one another will act and manage those records. The agreement is binding upon each of the parties, their contractors, their agents, their various legal counsels, and covers all records generated and shared until the project's completed. With that, if you have any other questions, I'd be happy to answer them, or Marty, if you have any other supplemental information.
Questions from the board for Mr. Hanson or Mr. Bushman?
Chairman, I have a question. So this memorandum of understanding, we have it before us, the Water Resource Board. Of the other entities, the Washington County Water District and Kane County Water District, are they in concurrence and on the same page that we are on this? Are they in agreement with this MOU?
Yes, both of the conservancy districts have separate legal counsel who have reviewed and approved the agreement. Each of the districts have also discussed the agreement and have executed it thus far. So Director Millis and the chairman are the last two signatures, along with Julie Valdez, main legal counsel for the division.
Additional questions? Seeing none, Mr. Lemon, would you make a motion, please?
I would make the motion that the board approve the common interest agreement and authorize its chairman and director to sign the memorandum of understanding.
Is there a second to the motion? Mr. Farrell seconds the motion. Is there any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you, Joel. Thank you, Director Millis, and thank you, Mr. Hanson. Mr. Bushman. Our next agenda item is agenda item number 9, Colorado River Drought Contingency Planning Update.
Something going on.
Director Millis or Assistant Director Williams? IT support.
Yep.
Coming forward.
The equipment always works well when the IT guy is in the room. Well, I will begin and just while Paul's working on this, Mr. Chairman and members of the board, I just wanted to give you a briefing on the drought contingency planning efforts that are going on the Colorado River, which the 7 Colorado River Basin states and the Department of Interior are trying to get completed by the end of this year. And we've invited others to view this presentation as it's being streamed out. The link that's at the top of the meeting agenda is the link for that, and people could watch this again later as they need. But we're also offering to go out and visit with any of the water users or people interested in this particular discussion at any time that would work for them. So 2 days ago, a set of final draft documents relating to the drought contingency plan were posted on the 7 basin states websites, as well as on the Upper Colorado River Commission's website and Reclamation's websites. And these documents provide the framework for the drought contingency planning efforts in both the upper and the lower basin of the Colorado River. So just quickly, this map shows the Colorado River Basin. The upper right portion of the map that's shaded in a yellow tan is the upper basin. The part in the lower left that is shaded with the pinkish tan is the lower basin. And the upper basin states of Wyoming, Colorado, New Mexico, and Utah, and the lower basin states are Arizona, Nevada, and California. The river is divided among the upper basin, the lower basin, and Mexico in accordance with the law of the river, which includes the Colorado River Compact, numerous acts of Congress, courts' decisions, and mutually agreed upon operating criteria. The thing that is driving the drought contingency planning, of course, is the current drought, which has been going on now for 19 years. This is one of the worst drought periods that this area has experienced in the last 1,200 years as we look back at tree ring data and estimates that were made from them. These graphs show the elevations of Lakes Powell and Meade since 2000, which is about when the drought began. And it's interesting to note that at that time, both reservoirs were effectively full. And you can see as you start from the left, let's look at the Lake Powell graph, which is up in the upper right, that for the first 4 years of this century, the level of the lake dropped very rapidly due to the extreme drought conditions that we were experiencing. There have been some good years in there. 2005, 2008, 2011 was an exceptionally good year, have helped to inch Lake Powell back up again. We had some bad years between 11 and 14 where it dropped again, but we watch it working its way back up. This year, which is represented by the very far right points on that graph, show that that drought, show the drought and how small the runoff that came into the reservoir actually was. And you see just a little teeny blip there. But the point is, I believe that Lake Powell is operating just as it was designed to. It is operating as it should, as is Lake Meade. But if you look at Lake Meade, which is down in the lower left part of the slide there, you see that it has continued to just drop. 2011 was a good year that put a lot of water in, not only the inflow, but also there was some equalization releases that helped bump that up. But the last several years, the lower basin, I believe through their efforts, have done a good job of keeping Lake Meade above elevation 1075, which is a very critical elevation for them right now because that's the elevation at which the lower basin states, beginning with Arizona, need to start taking shortages. So that's the backdrop for all of this. There are 5 documents that are they're all in one file posted on our website. It's on www.water.utah.gov. It's also on the Upper Colorado River Commission's website and Reclamation's website. But those 5 documents are the companion agreement, which is really a document that ties together the upper basin and the lower basin drought contingency plans. We've all been working together. We've been working separately, but together. So maybe separately, but in a parallel way on these drought contingency plans. Mexico has also been part of that discussion, and they tie into the lower basin plan, which I'll talk about in just a little bit. But this companion agreement that shows up here really ties the upper basin, the lower basin plans together and sets up rules and criteria for how the upper basin, the lower basin will work together. It sets deadlines and timelines and those sorts of things to just help ensure that everybody continues to work well and work together. So I'll explain the upper basin plans in just a little bit in more detail. But the other documents are the Upper Basin Drought Response Operations Agreement and the Upper Basin Demand Management Storage Agreement. For the Lower Basin, it's the Lower Basin DCP Agreement amongst the states and the Lower Basin Drought Contingency Operation Plan. I'm showing you this slide because for the upper basin, we talk about the Colorado River Storage Project initial units, and these are the ones that will be key to the upper basin's drought operations. And so I wanted to show these to you so that you know what we're talking about. We're talking about Glen Canyon Dam and Lake Powell Reservoir, Navajo Dam and Reservoir, the three reservoirs that make up the Aspinall unit in Colorado, which are Blue Mesa, Morrow Point, and Crystal Dam, and Flaming Gorge Dam and Reservoir. So the Upper Basin Drought Contingency Plan's design really is to protect Lake Powell against falling below the critical elevation of elevation 3525. Right now we're comfortably above that at 3590. We'd like to see it higher, obviously, but we still have some buffer between where we are now and 3525. So this effort then helps us assure compliance with the Colorado River Compact, which ensures that the upper basin users will not be forced into an involuntary curtailment of their uses. And so this is protection for water users in the upper basin and especially in Utah. We see all of this as good and helpful for the water users of Utah. The other thing that is important is to protect power generation at Glen Canyon Dam. That the revenues that come from that power generation are used for operation and maintenance of those initial CRSP units. It also goes towards important programs such as the endangered fish recovery programs, and it also ensures electrical service to customers. So a couple of the big elements of the Upper Basin Drought Contingency Plan are the drought response operations and the demand management. Again, the drought response operations are to ensure that Lake Powell does not fall below elevation 3525, and this plan relies on water available in those CRSP initial units that I just showed you on the map as needed. I think the main efforts start with Lake Powell, and then if operations of Lake Powell can't help keep that reservoir up, then we start looking at moving water from some of these other initial units under the existing records of decision agreements and compact provisions. And so we will do what we can to operate that whole system in a way that we keep Lake Powell above elevation 3525. A very critical part of all of this is the recovery of storage that might be moved from one of these other reservoirs to Lake Powell when elevation 3525 is no longer a risk. So I'm going to show you a chart that the Bureau of Reclamation has put together. This is based on the 24-month study that they most recently did. They have a good handle on the elevations of the reservoirs in the system. And for Lake Powell and Lake Mead, you see here their projections. And well, actually the history of where those two reservoirs have been for the last year or two, and the projections of where we go with those from here. The upper graph is for Lake Powell. There are three lines that you see: the red line at the bottom of the blue band, the blue line in the middle, and then the black dashed line at the top of that blue band. Those represent the minimum probable, most probable, and maximum probable projections for that reservoir. This becomes important for the drought operations, trying to keep Lake Powell above 3525 and deciding what needs to be done to move or to ensure that happens. If the minimum probable elevation, which is the dashed red line at the bottom of the blue band, looks like it will fall below elevation 3525 in the next 2 years, or 2 years from any point in time. Then work on a specific drought operations plan begins, and more frequent monitoring and modeling is implemented. And if it continues to look like that plan will need to be finalized and implemented, then discussions go on, obviously, with the Department of Interior, but also with the lower basin states. When it appears that plan may no longer be needed because the risk of Lake Powell falling below 3525 no longer exists, then the efforts are put on hold and things go back to normal until such time as they might need to be implemented again. And we think the risk of this happening is very small, given where Lake Powell is now, given the situation that we've got, but we just don't know what the future is going to bring. For the lower basin, it looks to be a little more critical, and definitely working together with the lower basin and with Mexico is going to give the best results, and we'll see some synergy where the sum of the whole, the sum of the parts is greater than, I'm sorry, the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. And so that gives you a little idea of how the drought response operation aspect of the drought contingency plan might work. The other part is the demand management portion. Wherein upper basin users would actively conserve water that would otherwise be put to beneficial use. This could be through fallowing or through interruptible supply agreements or some means to cut back uses that are already going on. We envision that being a voluntary and compensated type of program, but we went through a process like this, a program like this, with the System Conservation Pilot Program in the Colorado River over the last several years. And with that, we got some response and some interest. We don't know that we would be able to conserve enough in 1 year to really make the difference that would be needed. And so we have talked with DOI and with the lower basin states about being able to dedicate some storage space in Lake Powell whereby we could store water over a number of years and be able to then use that towards helping keep Powell above 3525 and maintaining our compliance with the Colorado River Compact. This would require storage space that we'd hope to get for free, as well as not have that water stored in there affect the operation of Lake Powell, meaning that if we got to a point where equalization was necessary, that this storage that we have built up would not trigger that. So it would be operationally neutral in effect. But we would need congressional authorization to authorize use of that space. The lower basin drought contingency plan is more simple. Ours is a process-based program. It will require Arizona, California, and Nevada to contribute additional water to Lake Mead storage at predetermined elevations. So if Lake Mead were to continue to fall, these three states would take additional shortages in effect to help ease the fall of that reservoir. This would also create some new flexibility to incentivize additional voluntary conservation of water that those three states could store in Lake Mead. And then an interesting point here regarding Mexico, that when the lower basin drought contingency plan becomes fully effective, the Republic of Mexico will be prepared to implement additional drought contingency measures also. And so that was a very brief update on what is going on. Again, those documents exist. They really set up the framework for a drought contingency plan for the Upper Basin. There are not specific measures that you will see, but really sets things up for that. And as we get close to, if we ever did, the need to implement drought contingency planning, we would be working with the parties involved to make sure that works as well as it can. So I don't know if there's any questions that I could answer from the board.
Questions from the board for Director Millis about contingency plans on the Colorado? I guess
Again,
we're satisfied with your report.
Okay, good. That's good to hear. So again, the effort really is being made to try to get all of this landed by the end of this year, and so the 7 states are working closely, working well together to do that. I guess my ask of the board would be that for your recommendation to allow me to sign the drought contingency documents when they are fully ready to be executed later this fall.
All right, I'd entertain a motion in that direction.
I would move that we recommend the Director of the Division of Water Resources, using his best judgment, sign the Colorado River Drought Contingency documents in behalf of the state of Utah when they're ready to be finalized, and that the board hereby ratify this action.
Mr. Lemon made that motion. Is there a second to the motion?
Second it.
Mr. Johnson seconds the motion. Is there any further discussion or question on the motion? If not, all in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you very much.
Director Millis.
Okay.
Our next agenda item is cloud seeding report, and Candace Hasenjager will give us that report, please.
Okay, Mr. Chairman and members of the board, thanks so much for having me here today. So I'm just going to give you a brief overview of what our cloud seeding year was last year and what is proposed for this year. So we did have 5 project areas that were seeded last year. These are pretty much our standard project areas that you've seen for a number of years. So we have the Northern Utah project, the Western Uinta project, the High Uinta project, and then the Central and Southern Utah project. In addition to that, we do have a small propane project in Emery County that also operated last year. For the overall bigger project areas that are mainly silver iodide, we had about 144 generators operating last year when there was a cloud to seed and the conditions were right, which, as we all know with the drought, that was challenging at times. We also operated 3 icing rate meters. You can see on your screen there's one at Bryan Head, one at Skyline Drive, and then one at Dry Ridge. And these are, I'll get into it a little later, they are funded by the Lower Basin states, so that is why they're in those project areas. There was also a radiometer funded by the Lower Basin states that I'll show you a picture of later. So the Emery and Sanpete County area, their propane project, they have about 7 propane sites that they operate. And I don't think I've ever shown you a picture of one of the propane sites. So here is one at Fred's Flat and then one at Hellhole. It looks like a nice place to be, in my opinion, but regardless of the name. And then these are all remotely operated, so that they're all based off of, them being able to remotely operate them. So pretty neat. area down there. And then this I've shown you in the past, and I just keep adding to it. Kind of shows you the historical funding perspective, how much has come from the local in green, how much has come from the state in blue. You can kind of see the variation. And then at the top is the cost share that the state contributed. So pretty much since 2007, we've been able to meet that 50% cost share. And then if we ever got above 300,000, we would reduce our cost share by that amount. This shows, in addition to adding the lower basin funds the last few years. And you can see in this last year in 2018, that's about the highest, most amount of money we've spent between the state, locals, and the lower basin, at least in this chart. And that is mainly due to the funding of the radiometer and report, in addition to their typical stuff. So overall, we look. So this is for the whole period of record. It's one of the interesting things is that drought actually causes people to have interest in cloud seeding. This year we have had 2 additional requests for looking into cloud seeding in areas that we haven't seen ever or for a long time, one being in Salt Lake City and the other is in the Price River. I just took a phone call right before this board meeting regarding that. So we don't necessarily think it's the best thing to do just during drought. It's a long-term increase that we look at. So the longer term you get, the better results you get, not just in the drought years, even though that's when the interest is usually peaked. So based on last year and the target and control analysis that North American Weather Consultants does, they estimate about a 4% increase in the April 1st snow water equivalent for the total weighted area, and then a 9% in the precipitation for all the projects. And that is over the entire period of record, so that doesn't necessarily represent just last year. Last year, the state and the locals spent a total of $470,836. Like I said, we were able to do the 50% cost share with the locals, so the board paid $235,418 last year. For next year, we're estimating about $547,535 for this next year. That doesn't include the most recent interest, so I do need to get an update on what that would do to the cost and if we think we'd still be able to meet the 50% cost share. But still, so far within good. And the way these are projected as it is on the high end of the generator hours, so it typically falls below that, so we still may be okay for next year. As I mentioned, the lower basins, Colorado River Basin states help to fund part of our cloud seeding project for the area that contributes to the Colorado River Basin. And this year we did, so that's been happening since 2007. And this last year we did sign a new contract with the lower basin states as an upper basin state, so with Colorado, Wyoming, and Utah, and New Mexico involved. To continue that for another at least 9 years. So they've said that they're going to participate for another 9 years. And that's Central Arizona, 6-agency committee in California, and the Southern Nevada Water Authority. It's the lower basin entities that are cost sharing with us. So here are the areas that contribute to the Colorado River Basin in the central and southern area, as well as the Dry Ridge, the High Uinta sites. So what they do, the lower basin states, they help to extend our season on the beginning of the year. So especially in the High Uinta project, they extend the whole month of November. So that project will start up November 1st. And in the central and southern area, that starts November 1st through the 15th, and then they also pick up the tail end, the March 15th through April 15th. And they also help to purchase additional propane for the Emory County project. they install the icing rate meters, and this last year they did install a radiometer in Moab. And that came about from a LaSalle and Abajo feasibility that was done the previous year. It might have been 2 years ago. So just verifying some of the assumptions that they made there. That report should be out this week. I haven't seen it yet, though. And this is a picture of the icing rate meters. This one's up at Bryan Head. So that just helps to measure if there's liquid water in the cloud, and lets them know if it's a good seedable condition. So this is a picture of the radiometer. What the radiometer does, rather than just having a point measurement of the like the icing rate meter, it measures the column of the water. So it measures the whole atmosphere above the radiometer site to get an idea of where exactly that liquid water is present. And so last year, the lower basin states helped fund $176,833 toward our cloud seeding project here. And next year, they have committed, and it just got an email saying it was all signed and approved, to extend our season like they have in the past, fund the icing rate meters in the Emery County propane project, as well as help to fund a cloud seeding study done by USU, which is kind of a third-party check overall and making sure we're doing everything right, as well as helping us to develop a WRF model, which is a weather research and forecasting model that we can, our hope is that we can use it to quantify the effects of cloud seeding better. So it is my recommendation that the board commit up to $150,000 for this next year for the operational cloud seeding program with a maximum cost share of 50% with the local sponsors. And I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Candace, for your report. And I have a question. Lower Colorado Basin folks help fund the shoulder months of November and, well, I guess we go, normally to April 1st?
Yes, yeah. Most of the rest of the northern Utah project area goes from December 1st through the end of March, so April 1st.
Okay. I'm just wondering, is it the lower basin states think it's a cost-effective investment, and should we look at extending the range, or does that decision come from the area sponsors more from the bottom up than the top down kind of a thing?
I think it was how it was recommended initially in 2006. And to be honest, that's one of the reasons why I was interested in getting this study done, is to determine, is that really the best use? Is that really the best use of our funds to pick up those shoulder months, or is it to better optimize the areas that are most efficient in snowpack? So that's one of my goals for this study.
Concentrating more during the more identified winter months.
Yeah, and areas, right? If there's an area that, because typically all of our silver iodide generators are manually operated, and so they're placed on private homes and areas. If there's an area that, well, wow, wouldn't it be great if we had a generator somewhere, but it's in a remote location, so looking at maybe targeting areas that we could put remote generators in, determining is it best to extend the season, or is it best to, increase silver iodide, dispersal, rather than just the shoulder months. So to be honest, that's one of the reasons why I'm interested in this study, is to help answer those questions.
Board members have questions? If not, review make the motion to commit the $150,000 for the coming season.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that the Utah Board of Water Resources commit up to $150,000 for the 2018-19 operational cloud seeding program with a maximum state cost share of 50% with local sponsors.
Kyle Stevens seconds the motion. Blaine Ipson made the motion. Any further discussion on the question? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Candace, for your report.
Yep.
And to note that Jim Lemon left us at approximately 3:30 this afternoon and was not in on the vote, as was not Juliet Tennant as well. So our next agenda item is the director's report, and so Director Millis, we will turn to you for that report.
Okay, thank you. I think I have probably said most everything that I would have said in a report. I will just briefly say that our ongoing discussions with the other two Bear River Commission states, Idaho and Wyoming, and Pacific Corp have been going very well as we're trying to figure out how we move ahead and build a model that's useful to all the parties and try to answer some of the questions and issues that are out there right now. So that is probably the main thing. I just want to again say thank you to the board for your service and great commitment. Thank you to our staff for the great job that they do as they help ensure that state's water resources are protected, conserved, developed, and planned for. And they do a great job, and so it's great for me to be able to work with all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. With that, I believe that concludes our business for today. Hope to see you all here again on December 6th. With that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn. Kyle Stevens makes the motion. It's non-debatable, so this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.